Good evening. I'm here to talk about variables. Variables are the very basic element that you start out with PHP. So a variable is the main way we store information with PHP, and it's actually the main way you store information with most programming languages. The most important things to know about variables in PHP, because syntax for variables is different depending on your programming language. In PHP, your variable starts with a $sign. The value of it is whatever was most recently assigned to that variable. So if my variable is car and I recently assigned Audi to it, that's the value of that variable. It's whatever I most recently assigned to it, and we'll discuss that here in a little bit. Values are assigned with equal sign. So I would say $sign car equals Audi, and that's my variable and my expression. So I'm assigning the term Audi to the variable car. The variables in PHP can be assigned any type of data, so it doesn't have to necessarily be text. It can be numbers, other things. Now variables used before they're assigned have default values. So a Boolean, which is typically true or false, it defaults to false. Integers and floats default to 0, and strings, such as used in echo, are set as empty. So they're just empty quotes, and an array is an empty array. So without you assigning anything to them, those are their defaults previous to you assigning a value to the variable. PHP is pretty good at converting types, which is really nice because a lot of other programming languages don't do it so easily. It's hard to convert data types, and so it's really nice that PHP allows you to convert different data types, string to double, and things like that. There is no size limit on the variables, so there's some really great benefits to using PHP and the variables in PHP. So variable format, as we said, it always begins with a $sign, and it must be followed by a letter, lowercase, uppercase. You can do camel case, which is where you start lowercase and go up to uppercase, or you can start or do an underscore. You can contain a number, any number between 0 and 9. It is case sensitive, so when you're referencing the variable in another line of your text, it needs to match exactly. The name should describe the information stored inside. So we don't want to name our variable car and then we're storing things like puppy. It really should reference what we are talking about, and so that it's really clear looking at the code what we're doing. So there are some predefined variables. These are variables that you won't be able to use on your own because they're already set aside in the system to be used for other things. This is just basic list, global servers, get, post. You've probably already seen those looking at this week's programming, and you'll get taught about those later lesson. But files, requests, session, env, cookie, error messages, these are all things that are already being used, and so you're not going to be able to use them as your variable name. So like we said before, PHP allows a lot of different data types. So I want to kind of discuss the different types of data types. So integers are whole numbers. So this is without the decimal point, just the number. So 8568. Doubles is where you do have a decimal point. And they're floating point numbers. So right here in my example of 8.568, which so it's floating over a few decimal points, or 56.7 if you're using like a percentage. Booleans is a true or false, so your data type is literally just true or false. Null is when there is no value, so it's set to null. A string is usually just a line of text, and you're putting it in quotes so that it's taking that literal. So it would take my name is Katie, and that would take it exactly. It doesn't convert it to anything. It's whatever text I put in there in the quotes, it stays. Array is typically I think of it as a list. So we have apples, orange, bananas. This is my array of fruit. I have a list of items. Objects, these are programmer-defined classes. And then resources, these are special variables that hold references to external resources. So something to database connections, and I think this is something that we'll discuss in later lessons. So using quotations for strings, there is a difference between using single quotes and double quotes. As we showed before, I had my string in quotes, and the difference shows up when using variables in quotes. So if I use single quotes, it displays exactly what is in the quote. So if I had my name is Katie, it would be in single quotes, and it would take the string exactly and move it over. Double quotes show what has been assigned to the value. So it's usually referencing another variable. And so my quote is, it's referencing something else. And so then when it prints out, it will take whatever had been assigned to that. Concatenation. So concatenation is when you join strings, and you do that with a period in between the two strings. So variables and actions. This week we see variables and actions in action, and I'm going to go over a little bit of the code so we can see it a little bit better. But we start in our PHP code, and we have our variable. We've named this variable. We have this correct syntax, the $sign, and then we've named it product description. And we have list price, discount percent. So you'll notice these names are specific to what it is. It's a product description. So we've been very specific, and we named it correctly. And we have our equal sign. Now you'll notice that these two sections are a little different, as in here we have post, and here we just are referencing other variables. So the value being assigned to it, in this top section, the value being assigned to it is saying it's getting whatever the user input in the product description box, and that's the value being assigned to this variable. Versus on these ones down here, discount, the value being assigned to that is list price, which is here, and times discount percent, which is here, times 0.01. So this variable is taking whatever's been assigned to this variable and this variable and multiplying them together times 0.01. And discount price is doing something similar, where it's taking the list price plus what's been assigned to this variable, or sorry, minusing what's been assigned to this variable. So these ones, you're inputting specifically beforehand what is going to be assigned to these variables, versus on these ones, it's whatever the user has input. So if we click over this screen, we will see the same code up here, where we're seeing product description equals is whatever the user has put in product description. So if we go to the index HTML, this is what the user is seeing. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm in the wrong index. There we go. This is what the user is saying, so product description, this is where it's pulling the information from. Whatever has been put in this product description will be assigned to this variable product description. And if we go to our it has this 2.1, we have our product description here. We have our list price and our discount percent as is shown here. And the values that are going to be assigned to these variables is going to be whatever I put in here. So I'm going to put guitar, list price, we're going to say is $500. And the discount percent is going to be 25%. So now it's taken and assigned to product description the inputs I gave it. I gave it guitar, it assigned it to that. I told it $500, it assigned it to list price, it assigned 25% to the standard discount, which then allowed these to be assigned values as well, because we took discount amount, which took the values that I had given here and calculated and gave it this value. So it was using these amounts that I input to calculate and be assigned to these variables. And so those are the main ways we're assigning variables. It's the user input, or we've told the variable beforehand, hey, these are the values. We can use numbers, we can use strings, other data types, we can use references to other variables and their values, or we can use values from the input of the user. I hope this was a clear description of how variables work and was able to go over the details. Thank you very much for listening. Have a good night.